One of the coolest things you can do with your metal riffs is combine different styles in this same riff. For example, you've got that really heavy, chunky palm muting and down picking with some cool riffs like old school Metallica, but then you go over to a band like Dokken, George Lynch's playing. You've got those wicked sounding single note riffs, and sometimes you've got those full chords implemented into that riff as well. And that's what we're going to do in this lesson today. So let me get this over to Gunnar, and I'm going to have him play this killer riff that he just came up with. Gunnar, thanks, dude. That was awesome. All right, guys, there are 4 parts to this riff, and I'm going to break each one down. 2 quick things before we get into the lesson. Number 1, if you're a Patreon supporter, you have the tabs and the backing tracks to this lesson. That's available now. There's a link in the description of this video here that will go to that post. Now, if you'd like to support me on Patreon, I greatly appreciate that. Real quick, what I do is a very simple 1-tier level. It's inexpensive, and I give you the tabs and the backing tracks, a full mix and one with just bass and drums. It's always fun to play along with. Give you that for at least 2 of my YouTube lessons each month. Now, the next thing before we get into the lesson, I just want to kind of break down the techniques. I want to call those out that we're going to be using. So we talked about the palm muting with the down picking. We're playing downstrokes here. We've also got some really cool single note riffs that we're doing, as you heard. Lastly, we're playing some full chords in this metal riff here, which I'm going to talk more about implementing that type of strategy into your metal riffs. We'll talk about that in our guitar chat at the end of the video, so make sure you hang around for that. Alright, the first thing I want to do is go over those 2 chords that we're playing, and I've got a little bit different way that I like to play my D and my C chords, which I'm going to share with you here. So first of all, we start out with that D, and once we cover this part, because each little section that we're going to go through, it starts out with these 2 chords here. So my D, of course, we've got that open D string, which is where your D starts. However, I like to start with the A string. The reason I do that is that A string that you're playing, that A note, which is lower than the D note, right? That's the lower octave of the 5th note of your D. And what that does is just gives you a little bit more edge and just, I guess, a heavier sound, if that makes sense. So I start out with the open A, then open D, and then the rest of the chord is like a regular D, except I don't fret that last E string. I leave that open. So you're only fretting 2 frets here, right? Just like that. So on the A string, we're going open, open, then we're on the 2nd fret, 3rd fret, and then open again. So you get this sound right here. If I were to play a regular D, it would sound like this. Okay, kind of cool, but also sounds kind of country. And we're not playing country music here. So again, I like to start out with that open A string. And of course, leave that E string open. Now we go from the D to the C. And I play my C like a regular C, but that B string, instead of playing the 1st fret, I like to play the 3rd fret. So I know there's a name for that, and I don't have it up here right now, so you guys feel free to share that in the comments. But again, it's a regular C, but on that B string, instead of playing that 1st fret, I'm playing the 3rd fret. So it's like this. A regular C would sound like this. Not bad, but that also sounds a little country. And we're not playing country today, so we're playing this instead. So real quick, those 2 chords together, and again, these 2 chords, this is the beginning of each section that we're going to be learning. All right, now let's cover the riff. And this is actually the easy part here. So we're gonna be just hammering down on that E power chord. I'm in standard tuning, by the way. I know most of you know that. I'm pretty much always in standard tuning with the exception of a few videos out there. But we're playing that E power chord. Now, we only play the E power chord one time before we go into the palm muting and the single note riffs. Now, let me play this part again real quick for you and just listen to the cadence that I'm playing here, okay? Now, to make this easy, and I like to kind of wrap our heads around what we're doing before we actually start playing it. To make this easy, this simplifies everything. Number one, we're only playing 2 frets. We're on the A string, frets 2 and 3, right? We're just going back and forth on those 2 notes there. So that simplifies this riff quite a bit. Now, the one part that you might have a little problem with, and not a problem, I say challenge if you're a new metal guitar player, is the back and forth between the E and the A string. I know that can be a challenge when you're just starting out. Those of you who have been playing for a while, probably not a big deal. But then the cadence, right? And this is the challenge we have with learning other people's music sometimes. You know, somebody writes a piece of music, it's natural to them because they wrote it, right? And you the same. You might write a really cool riff, but your friend has a hard time learning it. Well, you wrote it, right? So it's easier for you because it's in you, if that makes sense. So the cadence here, though, that's the part that can be a little tricky, in my opinion. And hey, if it's not tricky, just say, Jason, this is an easy riff. It's not tricky at all. Leave that in the comments. Or say, hey, man, it is a little tricky, but you know, I'm gonna just nail it. I'm gonna practice it until I get it. All right, so I'm gonna play it at normal speed again, and then I'll slow it down a little bit so that you can just get the cadence down, okay? Again, that part might be a little tricky. Just keep going until you get it. One thing I'll mention before we go to the second part here, guys, if you don't play it exactly like I play it here, give yourself the freedom to play something different, okay? Don't get discouraged like, man, I just can't get it down. I want you to get it down, but you might come up with something that sounds better to you. And that's the beauty of lessons like this. You might come up with something that's more your style, and it's like, okay, well, I see what Jason's doing or hear what he's doing, but I think this sounds better for me. Hey, go for it. So again, we start out with those chords, that D and that C, which I love playing the full chords with the metal riffs like this. And again, we're going to talk more about that at the end of the video. So let's jump right into the riffs since that part's the same. When we get to the riff here, though, it's very similar to what we did the first time around. Actually, all of the riffs, the cadence is the same. What's changing is we're just playing different single notes. That's all. So that makes everything pretty simple, right? So now, instead of this, we're playing this. Everything that's happening up here, right, in this section, really that remains constant. That remains the same. The only thing, again, that changes, we're going back and forth on those 2 strings after playing the power chord, but the only thing that changes is instead of 2 and 3 on the A string, we're going to be playing frets 5 and 7, okay? All right, so I'm going to go through this normal speed and I'll slow it down. So we'll actually run through these last two fairly quickly here because everything stays the same. We start out with the D, then go to the C. The cadence with that E between the E and A strings, that's all the same. The only thing again that changes is those last few notes, those last few single note riffs that we're playing. So this time we're actually going to play our single notes on the E string, frets 3 and 5. All right, let's go through it. I'm going to play it at normal speed, and then I'll slow the whole thing down for you. Now, this last section of the riff, this is kind of where I get that Dokken, get that George Lynch feel, because there's one note that we're playing, which is an F, right? That doesn't quite fit in the key of E minor that we're in. However, because we play it like that, it just gives it this really wicked twist. And that's kind of what George Lynch was known for, right? We've got those cool open chords that we're playing, then we've got this really wicked riff. And it's a very simple riff. I mean, this exercise, this whole thing, has been pretty simple. I know the cadence might be a bit challenging for some of you. You'll get it down though. But let's go through this. So what we're doing, our riff, our single note riff here is on the A string. We're going to be playing frets 7 and 8. All right, let's go through this. Now, before we go to our guitar chat, and you want to hang around for that because that's going to be a cool chat. It's always like we're just sitting in the studio here together, just hanging out, talking about guitars and metal, you know. So you might ask real quick though, why are you playing that riff on the A string and not on the D string? Because I could play this. But I'll play this instead. The reason I do that is those strings just give you a little bit different feel and vibe, in my opinion. I mean, they're the same notes, but the notes played on the A string and this part of the fretboard, well, it sounds a little different than the notes played, you know, way up here on the D string. And it's not a substantial difference, and there's no wrong way to play this, by the way. If you like playing it on the D string, frets 2 and 3, instead of the A string, frets 7 and 8, by all means do that, because it's actually a good string skipping exercise if you do it that way. I just personally like the way this sounds over this. And again, this is just my opinion on, you know, what I like for this specific riff. Maybe I would write another riff similar to that, but I might want to play those notes on the D string. So this is the beauty of playing guitar and just in general, just music in general. You know, there's oftentimes there's not like a right or wrong way to do things. There's what you feel fits that song or that riff or that moment. So just wanted to throw that out there. All right, time for some guitar chat. And I want to talk about combining these little pieces that we did in this riff, and I want to get your feedback on this. I want to know what your thoughts are on some of the things we're about to discuss. But a couple things real quick. I just want to remind my Patreon supporters, you have the tabs and backing tracks. There's a link in the description of this video. Also, don't forget to check out the other links in this video, in the description of this video. I've got my free Metal Riffs and Licks practice guide. If you don't have that, definitely get that. That's helped a lot of guitar players. I'll literally say it's helped thousands of guitar players. I also have guitar courses. There are links for my guitar courses. I've got online guitar courses out there, so do check those out. I appreciate that. One more thing real quick. I have not given this guitar its due attention on YouTube, and I need to just do like a real, full-blown review and my thoughts on this guitar. But this is the Shroedder, and it's made by Mike Shroedder. He's an independent guitar maker in Germany. And this specific model is the Marksman 87. So I just want to say thank you to Mike. He sent me this guitar several months ago. I think it was towards the end of 2000. What was last year? 2021. I'm filming this in June of 2022. But I just wanted to acknowledge Mike real quick. He doesn't know I'm acknowledging him. I mean, I've had this guitar on other videos. You guys have seen it. And of course, I've thanked Mike a few other times. But I just haven't given Mike the due attention because it is a really cool guitar. It is definitely an 80s guitar. That's what Mike specializes in. So guys, I'll leave a link to his YouTube channel, and you can check out his guitars on that channel, and he'll have contact info and all that there, if you guys want to reach out to him. Again, this is not sponsored. He was just cool enough to send me that guitar. So I'm like, you want to send me a guitar? Is this a scam? And hey, it showed up in the mail. So he's such a great dude, though. I've chatted with him a few times. Actually, I've got another video out there where him and I were talking about his build. So I'll leave a link to that video as well. So the full chords with the metal riffs, the palm muting, the chunky metal riffs. The reason why I bring this up, and this will be kind of a quick chat, and again, I'd like to know your thoughts, on what we're discussing here. So please leave those in the comments. But the thing I wanted to bring up is a lot of times in playing metal guitar, we get just so stuck on playing power chords. I mean, we love power chords. They're awesome. I mean, it kind of defines heavy metal if you think about it. The single note riffs, we've got the palm muting, we've got the down picking, and we've got the alternate picking too. We can get some real fast action going on there, but it's real easy to just stay in the power chord arena and not branch out outside of that. The thing is, you've got all these other strings and all these other notes on your guitar, and if you're only playing power chords all the time, even playing variations of them, because we talk about that a lot on this channel, you kind of find yourself boxed in a little bit, right? Even if you're playing, different progressions or whatever, and that's always a good thing, playing in different keys and such. But I want you to branch out a little bit, and maybe you don't do it all the time, but every now and then, throw in just a full chord in there and see what that sounds like. Or maybe you're writing this really cool riff, right? And this is a great way to break out. You got this really cool riff, but okay, that's the riff, but where do I go after that? You write another riff, but it just sounds too much like the one you just wrote. You're like, man, I don't know what else to do with this song. Implement a part with full chords like we just did. Oh man, that gives it this really cool contrast in my opinion. And this is something that I'm trying to be more aware of when I'm writing music. Now I know some types of metal, if you're into the heavy melodic death metal or black metal and that's primarily what you play, hey, there's no rule that says you can't throw a regular chord in there. That just gives it a different dynamic and changes things up, even if you're primarily sticking with the power chords, right? And that's okay. But I just want to kind of throw that out there. And of course, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if this helped you first and foremost. Because it's little things like this. It's these little things that sometimes we don't think about. It's like, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna try that, and you throw it in there. Maybe it's just one full chord you throw in there, and it just changes everything. It just opens up this new world to that riff and to that full song. If you're writing a full song, if you're wanting to make something out of it. So I just want to throw that out there, and that's why I thought this lesson was really important, because we're integrating those full chords that you might not hear that often in metal music. So guys, that wraps it up for this video. Please give this a like, give it a thumbs up. YouTube likes that, and I really appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel. I am constantly putting out content for you guys like this, and I'm also going to be putting some more 7-string content out there as well. You guys saw my 7-string video, the one right before, 2 videos before this one. I put that out there. I kind of fell back in love with my 7-string, so I'm going to, I tell the story in that video too, but I'm going to be putting out some more 7-string content, and I also plan to put out some more live content as well. A lot of you know I've been doing a lot of live solo acoustic gigs, which I'll break out the telly sometimes on that one. I think the last last video I put out was a guitar solo I did on stage at one of my live solo gigs. So definitely go back and check those out if you haven't seen those yet. But more content coming, of course, more videos like this. But again, guys, thank you so much for supporting this channel. I truly appreciate you guys, and you know what to do until the next video. Keep it metal.